Chapter 1. Ashes and New Beginnings. The war had been over for nearly 2 years. Peace had come, but peace wasn't as simple as everyone had imagined. The world was healing, cities were being rebuilt, families were finding each other again, old wounds were slowly closing. And yet, some things still fell apart. Katara stood on the deck of a ship, watching the waves roll beneath her. The wind tugged at her braid. Behind her, the shores of the southern water tribe were growing smaller and smaller. She should have felt excited. Instead, she felt strangely empty. Aang and Katara had ended things only a few months ago. There had been no dramatic fight, no betrayal, no anger, just distance. As the Avatar, Aang belonged to the entire world. Every nation needed him, every village wanted his help, every conflict landed on his shoulders. Katara had tried, she truly had, but eventually they found themselves spending more time apart than together. When they did meet, they were both exhausted. Their love hadn't disappeared, it had simply changed into something quieter. Something that wasn't enough anymore. So they had let each other go. Friends, still family, but no longer what they once were. Katara looked toward the horizon and released a slow breath. This trip was supposed to be a fresh start. The leaders of all 4 nations had agreed that understanding between nations needed to be rebuilt. Young representatives would travel and live among different cultures to strengthen relationships and learn from one another. And somehow, Katara had been chosen to represent the Southern Water Tribe in the Fire Nation. For 6 months, 6 very long months, she had almost declined, until she realized she needed something new. Something that belonged entirely to her. Not to Team Avatar, not to Aang, not to the war, just Katara. The Fire Nation appeared on the horizon as the sun began to set. Golden cliffs rose from the sea. Smoke drifted from distant volcanoes. Red-roofed cities sparkled beneath the evening light. It was beautiful. Katara hated how beautiful it was. Years ago, these shores had represented fear. Now they looked welcoming. The world really had changed. The ship arrived at the capital the next morning. Crowds filled the harbor. Merchants shouted. Children laughed. Soldiers moved through the streets. Nothing like the Fire Nation she remembered. A group of officials waited at the docks. Katara stepped onto the pier. One official bowed politely. "Welcome to the Fire Nation, Master Katara." She returned the gesture. "Thank you." The official smiled nervously. "His Majesty insisted on personally greeting you." Katara blinked. "Personally?" The official pointed toward the end of the dock. Her stomach immediately tightened, because standing there, dressed in formal Fire Lord robes, was Zuko. Of course he was. Who else would insist on personally greeting her? As Katara stepped onto the dock, her eyes found him immediately. Unfortunately, Zuko stood at the end of the pier, surrounded by officials, yet somehow he was the only person she noticed. The last time she'd seen him had been months ago. She wasn't prepared for how much he'd changed. The years had changed him. The boy who had chased the Avatar around the world was gone. The Fire Lord standing before her looked older now. Taller, stronger, more confident. The uncertainty that once haunted him had faded. His shoulders had broadened from years of training and carrying the weight of a nation. The sharp angles of his face had matured, giving him a quiet confidence that hadn't existed when they were younger. His dark hair was longer than before, tied neatly at the back in the traditional style of Fire Nation royalty, though a few rebellious strands escaped and fell across his forehead whenever the sea breeze picked up. His scar was still there. Katara's gaze lingered on it for a moment. Once, it had been the first thing people noticed. Now it wasn't. Now it was simply part of him. Her eyes moved away far too quickly. The rich crimson and gold robes of the Fire Lord suited him annoyingly well. Gold dragon embroidery caught the morning sunlight, gleaming against the dark fabric and making him look every bit the ruler of a nation. Which was unfair, because Zuko had spent most of his teenage years stumbling through life fueled by stubbornness, bad decisions, and pure determination. Somehow he'd grown into the role. The sunlight seemed to settle around him, highlighting the strong line of his jaw and the calm authority in the way he carried himself. His golden eyes were steadier now. No longer filled with constant anger or uncertainty, they carried experience, responsibility, and a quiet confidence that hadn't existed during the war. He looked every bit the Fire Lord. And somehow that made him even more irritating. Somehow it also made him significantly more attractive. Katara immediately hated that thought. She blamed the long journey. And the heat. And probably dehydration. Definitely not Zuko. Then he looked up. Their eyes met across the dock. His amber eyes were exactly the same. Warm like firelight. Steady. Focused entirely on her. For a second Katara forgot every clever thing she had planned to say. Then Zuko smirked. Actually smirked. And just like that, he became irritating again. You're staring. Katara groaned immediately. Never mind. You're exactly the same. His smile widened, and for a reason Katara couldn't explain, her heart stumbled for half a second. She ignored it. Immediately. Absolutely ignored it. Welcome to the Fire Nation, Zuko said. Thanks. You look terrible. I spent 2 weeks on a ship. You still look terrible. Katara narrowed her eyes. Good to know diplomacy is thriving. It's my greatest strength. She rolled her eyes. Somehow, despite everything, despite the years and responsibilities and crowns and titles, talking to Zuko still felt effortless. Dangerously effortless. Neither of them noticed the small smiles they were wearing as they walked toward the city together. And neither of them knew that the next 6 months would change everything.